The roar of 6 F/A-18 Super Hornets thundered across Pensacola Naval Air Station as the Blue Angels completed another flawless diamond formation practice run. Down on the tarmac, amid the controlled chaos of ground crews and fuel trucks, one figure moved with quiet precision that went completely unnoticed by the pilots climbing down from their cockpits. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Chen wiped hydraulic fluid from her hands with an oil-stained rag, her small frame nearly invisible among the towering maintenance scaffolds and hulking aircraft. At 26, she possessed the kind of understated competence that made complex machinery bend to her will, yet somehow made her blend into the background of every room she entered. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her coveralls bore the faded patches of someone who had earned her place through years of meticulous work, rather than dramatic gestures. What nobody knew about Maintenance Specialist Chen was that she spent her off-duty hours in ways that would have shocked her colleagues. While they grabbed beers at the local hangouts or caught up on sleep, Maya disappeared to a small hangar on the far side of the base where older aircraft waited for restoration or retirement. There, surrounded by the ghosts of aviation history, she practiced something that could end her career if discovered by the wrong people. The morning sun painted the Florida sky in shades of amber and rose as Maya arrived for her shift at 0500 hours. Pensacola Naval Air Station hummed with the early morning rhythm of military precision, but the Blue Angels hangar carried a different energy entirely. This was where perfection wasn't just expected. It was demanded by physics, aerodynamics, and the unforgiving mathematics of high-speed flight. Maya's assignment to the Blue Angels maintenance crew had come through standard rotation protocols, but she sometimes wondered if someone in personnel had a sense of humor. The Navy's premier flight demonstration squadron represented everything glamorous about naval aviation, while she represented everything invisible. The pilots were celebrities, their names known to millions who watched air shows across the country. The maintenance crew were shadows, essential but unseen, their contributions measured in reliability rather than applause. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez ran the maintenance division with the efficiency of a Swiss watch and the temperament of a caffeinated hurricane. He stood 6 feet 4 inches of pure military bearing, his voice capable of cutting through jet engine noise and excuses with equal effectiveness. When Maya reported for duty that morning, she found him studying a maintenance log with the intensity of someone reading classified intelligence. "Chen," Rodriguez called without looking up from his paperwork. "Blue Angel 6 needs a complete hydraulics inspection before the afternoon practice session. Flight control surfaces are showing irregular response times in the computer diagnostics. I want every line checked, every connection verified, and a full system test completed before that bird leaves the ground again." Maya nodded and gathered her tools. Blue Angel 6 was Commander Sarah Mitchell's aircraft, the narrator pilot whose job involved explaining the formation maneuvers to crowds while simultaneously flying with precision that left no margin for error. Mitchell had a reputation for being demanding about her aircraft's condition, which Maya respected. In her experience, pilots who cared obsessively about maintenance details were the ones who stayed alive longest. The F/A-18 Super Hornet towered above Maya as she began her inspection. To most people, the aircraft looked like a sleek Predator frozen in blue and gold paint. To Maya, it was a symphony of interconnected systems, each one crucial to keeping tons of metal and fuel dancing through the sky at speeds that would kill a human body if something went wrong. She'd been working on military aircraft for 8 years, but the Blue Angels machines represented a level of precision that still impressed her. As she traced hydraulic lines and tested pressure readings, Maya became aware of voices approaching her work area. Commander Mitchell walked alongside Captain James Hammer Harrison, the Blue Angels commanding officer, their conversation carrying the easy confidence of people who had earned their authority through demonstrated competence rather than political maneuvering. "The new pilot selections are coming up next month," Mitchell was saying. "Any thoughts on who might be ready for the transition?" Captain Harrison paused near Maya's work area, though neither pilot seemed to notice her presence. She had become expert at the kind of invisibility that allowed maintenance personnel to work while important conversations happened around them. "The talent pool is strong this year," Harrison replied. "But you know what I'm looking for. Technical skill is just the entry fee." I need pilots who understand that precision isn't about showing off. It's about trusting your teammates with your life every time you take formation. Maya continued her inspection while listening to their discussion. The Blue Angels pilot selection process was legendary in naval aviation circles. Out of hundreds of applicants, only a handful would be chosen to join the team that represented the pinnacle of military flying excellence. The requirements went far beyond simple flight skills. Candidates needed thousands of hours of experience, flawless safety records, leadership qualities, and the psychological makeup to perform complex maneuvers while maintaining formation tolerances measured in feet rather than yards. "What about that hotshot from VFA 103? Mitchell asked. "Lieutenant Commander Parks has the flight hours and the recommendations." Harrison's expression grew thoughtful. "Parks has skills, no question. But I'm concerned about attitude. Last week during the evaluation flights, he made comments about how Blue Angels flying looks easy compared to combat missions. Anyone who thinks demonstration flying is easy doesn't understand what we do here." Maya found herself silently agreeing with Harrison's assessment. She'd watched enough Blue Angels practices to understand that what looked effortless to spectators required split-second timing and absolute trust between pilots flying at closing speeds that left no room for ego or hesitation. The margin for error in formation flying was smaller than most people realized, and smaller still when performed for crowds who expected perfection every time. As the officers moved away, Maya returned her focus to the hydraulic system she was inspecting. But their conversation had triggered something in her memory, thoughts she usually kept buried during working hours. She knew more about pilot selection criteria than most maintenance personnel had reason to know. She also knew more about high-performance flying than her job description would suggest. These were dangerous thoughts for someone in her position, but they persisted despite her efforts to focus on the technical work in front of her. The hydraulic inspection revealed a subtle pressure inconsistency in the port-side control system. Nothing dramatic enough to ground the aircraft, but significant enough to affect the precise control inputs that Blue Angels flying demanded. Maya documented the finding and began the process of tracking down the source. What should have been a routine inspection was turning into a complex diagnostic challenge. Hours passed as Maya methodically tested each component in the hydraulic network. The problem proved elusive, manifesting only under specific pressure and temperature conditions that required sophisticated testing equipment to replicate. By lunchtime, she had identified the issue as a seal deterioration in a servo valve that controlled aileron response. The part would need replacement, which meant Blue Angel 6 would miss the afternoon practice session unless she could complete the repair quickly. Maya was in the middle of disassembling the servo valve when she became aware of someone watching her work. She looked up to find Lieutenant Commander David "Spike" Walsh, Blue Angel 4, observing her diagnostic process with professional interest. Walsh had a reputation as the most technically minded pilot on the team, someone who understood aircraft systems at the level of an engineer rather than just an operator. "Find something interesting?" Walsh asked, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity rather than the casual inquiry most pilots made about maintenance issues. Maya held up the deteriorated seal that had been causing the control irregularities. "Servo valve seal degradation," she explained. "The material started breaking down under high-pressure cycling. It's creating intermittent response delays in the aileron control system." Walsh examined the failed component with the attention of someone who understood its implications. "How long to replace it?" "About 3 hours if I can get the replacement part from supply," Maya replied. "But that assumes no complications during installation." 3 hours puts us past the practice window," Walsh observed. "Any way to expedite the process?" Maya considered the question while mentally reviewing the repair procedures. "I could potentially reduce that to 2 hours if I pre-position all the tools and components. But rushing hydraulic system work creates risks that aren't worth the time savings." Walsh nodded approvingly. "Better to miss practice than compromise safety." "Good call." As Walsh walked away, Maya reflected on the brief interaction. Most pilots treated maintenance personnel as invisible problem solvers, acknowledging their existence only when something needed fixing. Walsh had engaged with her as a technical professional, someone whose expertise deserved respect rather than dismissal. It was a small thing, but it reminded Maya why she had chosen this career path despite its limitations and frustrations. The part replacement proceeded smoothly. though it required the patience and precision that characterized all hydraulic system work. Maya found herself thinking about the pilots who would trust their lives to her mechanical skills, and about the crowds who would watch their performances without ever considering the invisible foundation of technical expertise that made those performances possible. There was something satisfying about being essential while remaining unnoticed, about knowing that her competence contributed to something larger than herself. But there was also something limiting about it. Maya had chosen maintenance work partly because it offered stability and clear advancement paths, but mostly because it allowed her to work with aircraft without the political and social complications that came with more visible roles. She could be excellent at her job without anyone questioning whether she belonged there, without anyone making assumptions about her motivations or capabilities based on factors that had nothing to do with technical competence. The afternoon was ending by the time Maya completed the servo valve replacement and conducted the required system tests. Blue Angel 6's hydraulic system now responded with the precision that demonstration flying demanded, but the aircraft had missed its scheduled practice session. Maya documented the repair in the maintenance logs and prepared to brief Commander Mitchell on the work that had been completed. She found Mitchell in the pilot's ready room, reviewing flight plans for the following day's practice session. The commander looked up as Maya entered, her expression shifting to the focused attention that pilots reserve for maintenance briefings. "How's my bird, Chen?" Mitchell asked directly. "Servo valve replacement completed successfully," Maya reported. "System pressure and response times are now within optimal parameters. The aircraft is ready for flight operations." Mitchell studied the maintenance documentation Maya provided, her attention focused on the technical details rather than making casual conversation. "This seal failure," she said, pointing to Maya's diagnostic notes. "Could it have affected flight safety if it hadn't been caught?" Maya considered her answer carefully. The degradation was gradual, so immediate safety impact was minimal. But continued operation would have led to increasingly unpredictable control response, especially during high-G maneuvers where hydraulic pressure peaks. "In other words," Mitchell said, "it could have been dangerous during the kind of flying we do here." "Yes, ma'am." Formation flying requires absolute predictability in control response. Any uncertainty in how the aircraft reacts to pilot inputs creates risks that multiply across the entire team. Mitchell nodded with the satisfaction of someone whose concerns had been validated by technical expertise. "Good catch, Chen. How long have you been working on military aircraft?" 8 years, ma'am." 4 years on carrier-based fighters before transferring to shore-based operations. "Carrier experience," Mitchell observed. "That explains the attention to detail. Nothing teaches precision like knowing that mechanical failure means ditching in the ocean." Maya had learned early in her career that carrier operations demanded a level of technical excellence that left no room for approximation or shortcuts. When aircraft launched from carriers, they carried the accumulated expertise of dozens of maintenance personnel who had checked and double-checked every system. Failure wasn't just disappointing. It could be fatal for pilots and expensive for the Navy in terms of lost aircraft and mission capability. As Maya left the ready room, she reflected on the brief conversation with Commander Mitchell. The pilot had engaged with her as a technical professional, acknowledging both her expertise and the importance of her work to flight safety. It was the kind of interaction that reminded Maya why she had chosen this career, despite its limitations and the assumptions people made about maintenance personnel. But walking back through the hangar, surrounded by the Blue Angels aircraft that represented the pinnacle of demonstration flying, Maya found herself thinking about paths not taken and possibilities that remained unexplored. She had chosen invisibility and stability, but part of her wondered what might have happened if she had made different choices years ago. The evening shift was quieter, with fewer personnel around and more time for thorough inspections and preventative maintenance. Maya used the opportunity to conduct detailed examinations of components that often got overlooked during busy day shifts. It was during one of these inspections that she discovered something that would change everything. Blue Angel 2's engine intake showed signs of foreign object damage, tiny scratches and dings that suggested debris ingestion during recent flights. The damage was subtle enough that casual inspection might miss it, but significant enough to potentially affect engine performance during the high-stress operations that characterized Blue Angel's flying. Maya documented the findings and began the process of determining whether the damage required immediate attention or could be addressed during scheduled maintenance periods. As she worked, Maya became aware of footsteps approaching her work area. She looked up to find Captain Harrison standing nearby, his expression suggesting that he had been watching her work for some time. The commanding officer of the Blue Angels was not someone who usually appeared on the flight line during evening shifts without good reason. "Evening, Chen?" Harrison said. "Working late again?" "Yes, sir. Conducting detailed inspections while the aircraft are available for extended maintenance periods." Harrison approached the engine intake Maya had been examining. "Find anything concerning?" Maya pointed out the foreign object damage she had discovered, explaining its potential implications for engine performance and reliability. Harrison listened with the attention of someone who understood that seemingly minor mechanical issues could escalate into major problems under the stress of demonstration flying. "How serious is this?" Harrison asked. "The immediate flight safety impact is minimal," Maya replied. "But continued operation without repair could lead to accelerated engine wear and potentially more serious damage during high-performance operations." Harrison studied the damaged area with professional interest. "What's your recommendation?" "Engine removal for detailed inspection and repair. The work can be scheduled during the next maintenance window without affecting the current practice schedule." "Do it," Harrison decided. "Better to be conservative with engine issues. How long have you been working on the Blue Angels aircraft?" 3 months, sir. Since my transfer from VFA 147. VFA 147, Harrison repeated. "The Argonauts. I flew with them about 5 years ago. Good squadron. What brought you to Pensacola?" Maya had prepared for this question, though she hadn't expected it to come from the Blue Angels commanding officer. "I requested shore duty after completing my sea tour, sir. The Blue Angels assignment came through normal rotation." Harrison nodded, but his expression suggested that he was processing more information than Maya's simple answer provided. 3 months, and you're already catching engine damage that could have been missed by less experienced personnel. That kind of attention to detail doesn't develop overnight. Maya felt the familiar tension that came when her competence attracted attention she preferred to avoid. "I've had good training and experienced supervisors, sir." "I'm sure you have," Harrison replied. "But training doesn't account for the kind of diagnostic instincts you've been demonstrating. That comes from experience and natural aptitude." The conversation was moving into territory that made Maya uncomfortable. She had learned to be competent without being exceptional, to solve problems without drawing conclusions that might lead to uncomfortable questions about her background or capabilities. But Harrison was clearly someone who noticed more than most people, and his attention felt like scrutiny rather than casual appreciation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. "Is there anything else you need from me regarding the engine inspection, sir?" Maya asked, hoping to redirect the conversation back to technical matters. Harrison studied her face for a moment before responding. "No, that covers it. Good work tonight, Chen. Keep up the attention to detail." As Harrison walked away, Maya returned to her inspection work, but her mind was processing the implications of their conversation. The commanding officer of the Blue Angels had taken time during his evening routine to personally check on maintenance activities and engage in detailed discussion about technical findings. That level of personal attention suggested either exceptional leadership style or particular interest in her work. Maya had learned to be wary of particular interest. In her experience, standing out from the crowd led to questions she preferred not to answer, opportunities she couldn't accept, and expectations that conflicted with the careful anonymity she had constructed around herself. The Blue Angels' assignment was supposed to be routine maintenance work, technically challenging but socially invisible. If she was attracting attention from the commanding officer, it suggested that her strategy of competent invisibility might not be working as effectively as she had hoped. The rest of the evening shift passed without incident, but Maya found herself thinking about Captain Harrison's questions and observations. The Blue Angels represented the most visible assignment in naval aviation, a place where excellence was expected and mediocrity was impossible to hide. Maya had requested the assignment because she thought she could contribute to something important while maintaining the low profile she had carefully cultivated throughout her career. But as she secured her tools and prepared to end her shift, Maya realized that true excellence might be impossible to hide, even when surrounded by other exceptional people. The Blue Angels attracted the best pilots in naval aviation, but they also attracted support personnel who operated at levels that made hiding among the crowd more difficult than she had anticipated. Walking across the darkened base toward her quarters, Maya found herself thinking about choices and consequences, about the price of invisibility and the risks of recognition. She had built her career around being essential but unnoticed, competent but unremarkable. But working with the Blue Angels was forcing her to confront the possibility that some environments demanded excellence that couldn't be hidden behind careful anonymity and strategic modesty. For the first time since arriving at Pensacola, Maya wondered whether her strategy of invisible competence was sustainable, or whether the demands of working with the Navy's premier flight demonstration squadron would eventually force her to reveal capabilities she had spent years learning to conceal. The thought both excited and terrified her, because she knew that once certain doors opened, there would be no returning to the safety of anonymity she had worked so hard to achieve. The Florida dawn broke clear and windless, perfect conditions for precision flying that would test both aircraft and pilots to their limits. Maya arrived at the Blue Angels hangar earlier than usual, drawn by a restlessness that had kept her awake most of the night. The conversation with Captain Harrison had unsettled her in ways she was still trying to understand, creating an awareness that her carefully maintained invisibility might be more fragile than she had believed. The hangar buzzed with pre-flight activity as ground crews prepared 6 F/A-18 Super Hornets for the morning practice session. Maya moved through her assigned tasks with practiced efficiency, but she noticed something different in how others interacted with her. Chief Rodriguez's briefings included more technical detail than usual. Lieutenant Commander Walsh made a point of checking her work progress personally. Even the other maintenance specialists seemed more aware of her presence than they had been during her first months with the squadron. Maya was conducting her routine pre-flight inspection of Blue Angel 3 when she overheard a conversation that confirmed her growing concerns about unwanted attention. Petty Officer Jackson, one of the avionics specialists, was talking with Airman Rodriguez near the tool storage area, their voices carrying just far enough for her to catch fragments of their discussion. "Did you see the engine damage report Chen filed yesterday?" Jackson was saying. "She caught foreign object ingestion that the day shift completely missed. That kind of diagnostic work usually takes years to develop." Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, and remember last week when she identified that hydraulic pressure fluctuation? Most people would have chalked it up to normal system variation, but she tracked it down to a failing accumulator that could have caused control problems during high-G maneuvers." Maya continued her inspection while listening to their conversation, feeling the familiar anxiety that came with being noticed for the wrong reasons. Excellence in maintenance work was expected, but the kind of instinctive diagnostics that came naturally to her apparently stood out, even among the highly skilled personnel assigned to the Blue Angels. "You think there's more to her background than the standard maintenance track?" Jackson asked. "Has to be," Rodriguez replied. "Nobody develops that level of systems knowledge without either extensive experience or specialized training that goes beyond what you get in normal Navy schools." Maya finished her inspection and moved to another aircraft, but the conversation continued to echo in her mind. She had spent years learning to be competent without being exceptional, to solve problems efficiently without displaying the deeper understanding that might raise questions about her background or training. But working with the Blue Angels was proving to be different from previous assignments in ways she hadn't anticipated. The morning practice session proceeded flawlessly, with 6 aircraft launching in perfect sequence and returning 90 minutes later after executing maneuvers that required split-second timing and absolute trust between pilots. Maya watched from the flight line as the jets touched down, their arrival choreographed with the same precision that characterized their aerial performances. But her attention was drawn to something unusual about Blue Angel 5's landing approach. Commander Lisa Phoenix Torres brought her aircraft down with textbook precision, but Maya noticed a subtle asymmetry in the control surface movements during the final approach phase. The aileron deflections appeared slightly uncoordinated, suggesting a possible issue with the flight control system that might not be immediately apparent to the pilot. Maya made a mental note to examine the aircraft's control systems during post-flight inspection. As the pilots completed their shutdown procedures and began walking toward the debriefing room, Maya approached Blue Angel 5 to begin her inspection. She had learned to trust her instincts about aircraft behavior, and something about Commander Torres's landing had triggered her diagnostic sense in ways that demanded investigation. The post-flight inspection revealed what Maya had suspected. The port aileron servo unit showed signs of intermittent operation, creating slight delays in control response that would be barely noticeable during normal flight operations, but could become significant during the precise maneuvering that characterized Blue Angel's performances. Maya documented her findings and began the process of tracing the problem to its source. "Find something interesting, Chen," The voice belonged to Commander Torres, who had returned to check on her aircraft after completing the flight debriefing. Phoenix had a reputation as one of the most technically knowledgeable pilots in the squadron, someone who understood aircraft systems at the component level rather than just the operational level. Maya looked up from the servo unit she was examining. Possible intermittent failure in the port aileron control system, ma'am. I noticed some asymmetry during your landing approach that suggested uncoordinated control surface movement. Torres's expression shifted to sharp attention. You observed my landing approach closely enough to notice control surface coordination? Maya realized she had revealed more awareness than most maintenance personnel would typically demonstrate. I watch all the landings as part of post-flight assessment, ma'am. Part of learning to anticipate maintenance requirements. Most maintenance people watch landings to see if the aircraft touches down safely, Torres observed. You're watching them to diagnose potential system problems based on control surface behavior. That's a different level of observation. Maya felt the familiar tension of having displayed competence that attracted unwanted scrutiny. Experience teaches you what to look for, ma'am. Torres studied Maya's face for a moment before responding. What kind of experience teaches someone to diagnose flight control problems by watching landing approaches? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that Maya wasn't prepared to address. She had spent years learning to deflect such questions without appearing evasive. But Torres's direct approach made casual deflection more difficult than usual. Extensive maintenance experience on carrier-based aircraft, ma'am, Maya replied. Carrier operations require attention to details that might be less critical in shore-based flying. Carrier experience explains attention to detail, Torres agreed. But what you're demonstrating goes beyond detail orientation. You're reading aircraft behavior like someone who understands flight dynamics at the pilot level, not just the maintenance level. Maya returned her attention to the servo unit inspection, hoping to redirect the conversation back to technical matters. Would you like me to continue with the diagnostic procedure, ma'am? Torres watched Maya work for several minutes, her attention focused not just on the technical process, but on the underlying competence that guided Maya's approach to the problem. How long have you been working on military aircraft, Chen? 8 years, ma'am. And before that? Maya hesitated before answering. Civilian aviation experience, ma'am. Small aircraft maintenance and flight training support. Flight training support, Torres repeated. What kind of flight training? The questions were becoming more specific than Maya was comfortable with, probing into areas of her background that she preferred to keep vague. General aviation flight instruction, ma'am. Private pilot training, some commercial certification support. Torres nodded slowly, but her expression suggested she was processing information beyond Maya's simple answers. Private pilot training requires understanding flight dynamics from both maintenance and operational perspectives. That would explain some of what I'm observing in your diagnostic approach. Maya completed her inspection of the servo unit and identified the source of the intermittent failure. A connector was showing signs of corrosion that created electrical resistance under certain conditions, leading to delayed response in the control system. The repair would be straightforward, but the failure could have become more serious during the high-stress operations that characterize demonstration flying. Connector corrosion causing intermittent electrical resistance, Maya reported. Repair time approximately 2 hours, including system testing. Torres examined the failed component with professional interest. Good catch. That kind of intermittent failure can be difficult to diagnose because it doesn't show up consistently during ground testing. Yes, ma'am. Flight loads and vibration can cause intermittent connections to behave differently than they do during static testing. Exactly, Torres agreed. Most maintenance personnel understand that intellectually, but you seem to understand it from experience. Have you ever dealt with intermittent electrical failures during actual flight operations? Maya felt the conversation moving into dangerous territory again. Carrier operations expose aircraft to environmental conditions that can create various types of intermittent failures, ma'am. Torres's expression suggested she recognized the deflection, but chose not to press further at that moment. Complete the repair when you have time, Chen, and thanks for the sharp eyes on the landing approach. That kind of observation skill is valuable. As Torres walked away, Maya reflected on the conversation and its implications. The Blue Angels pilots were clearly more observant than she had anticipated, and more willing to engage maintenance personnel in detailed technical discussions. Maya's strategy of competent invisibility was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain when surrounded by people who noticed everything and understood the significance of what they observed. The afternoon brought a different kind of challenge when Chief Rodriguez approached Maya with an unusual request. "Chen, I need you to assist with a special project. We're conducting an evaluation of diagnostic procedures for potential implementation across other squadrons. I want you to document your approach to identifying the engine damage you found yesterday." Maya felt a chill of apprehension. Documentation meant creating records that could be reviewed by people beyond the immediate squadron, potentially exposing her methods to scrutiny that might reveal more about her background than she was comfortable sharing. "What kind of documentation are you looking for, Chief?" "Step-by-step breakdown of how you identified the foreign object damage, what signs you looked for, what diagnostic tools you used, that sort of thing. The idea is to create training materials that could help other maintenance personnel develop similar diagnostic skills." Maya understood the value of such training materials, but she also understood the risks of documenting methods that might reveal the depth of her experience and knowledge. "When do you need this completed, Chief?" "End of the week should be fine. Take your time and be thorough. The better the documentation, the more useful it will be for training purposes." Maya spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about how to document her diagnostic approach without revealing the intuitive understanding that came from years of experience she couldn't officially acknowledge. The challenge was explaining how she had identified subtle signs of damage that others had missed without admitting to the level of expertise that such recognition implied. The evening shift brought a different perspective on her situation when she encountered Petty Officer 3rd Class Maria Santos, one of the newer maintenance specialists assigned to the Blue Angels. Santos had been struggling with some of the advanced diagnostic procedures required for demonstration squadron aircraft, and Maya had been providing informal guidance when time permitted. "Chen, can I ask you something?" Santos said as they worked on adjacent aircraft during the quieter evening hours. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "How do you know so much about aircraft systems?" "I mean, I've been through all the same training programs, but when you explain things, it's like you understand how everything connects in ways that aren't covered in the technical manuals." Maya considered her response carefully. Santos was asking the same question that others had been exploring more indirectly, but with the honest curiosity of someone genuinely interested in learning rather than investigating. Experience teaches you to see patterns and connections that aren't obvious when you're first learning the systems. "But it's more than just experience," Santos persisted. "When you diagnosed that hydraulic problem last week, you started by checking components that weren't even mentioned in the troubleshooting procedures. How did you know to look there?" Maya realized that her diagnostic methods had been noticed by more people than she had understood. Sometimes the manual procedures don't cover every possible failure mode. You learn to think about how systems interact under stress conditions that might not be addressed in standard documentation. Santos nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense, but it also sounds like the kind of understanding that comes from more than just maintenance experience. Like maybe you've had training that goes beyond the standard Navy schools." The conversation was moving into territory that Maya recognized as potentially dangerous. Santos wasn't trying to investigate her background, but her observations were leading to conclusions that could attract the wrong kind of attention from people who were trying to investigate. "The Navy provides excellent training opportunities for people who are interested in developing advanced skills," Maya replied diplomatically. "Have you ever thought about applying for pilot training?" Santos asked suddenly. "I mean, with your understanding of aircraft systems and flight dynamics, you'd probably do really well in flight school." Maya felt her pulse quicken at the unexpected question. "Pilot training isn't really something I've considered," she said, hoping her voice sounded casual rather than defensive. "Why not?" "You obviously love working with aircraft, and you understand them better than most people I've met. Plus, the Navy is always looking for qualified candidates, especially people with your kind of technical background." Maya finished the inspection she was conducting and began gathering her tools. "Pilot training is a big commitment, and I'm satisfied with maintenance work. It's challenging and important, and I enjoy solving technical problems." Santos seemed to sense that she had touched on a sensitive topic. "Sorry, didn't mean to pry. It's just that watching you work, it's obvious you have a real gift for understanding aircraft. Seemed like a natural progression." "No problem," Maya replied. "I appreciate the vote of confidence." But as Maya secured her tools and prepared to end her shift, Santos's question continued to echo in her mind. The suggestion about pilot training wasn't the first time someone had made that observation, and it probably wouldn't be the last. Working with the Blue Angels was exposing her to people who understood aviation at levels that made her own knowledge more visible than she had anticipated. Walking across the base toward her quarters, Maya found herself thinking about choices and consequences in ways she had been avoiding since arriving at Pensacola. Her strategy of invisible competence had worked effectively throughout her career, allowing her to contribute to important missions while maintaining the anonymity that protected her from complications she wasn't prepared to handle. But the Blue Angels' assignment was proving to be different from anything she had experienced before. The people she worked with were more observant, more knowledgeable, and more interested in understanding the capabilities of everyone around them. Her attempts to blend into the background were being undermined by the very competence that made her valuable to the squadron. Maya had spent years learning to hide her true capabilities behind careful modesty and strategic deflection. But she was beginning to realize that some environments demanded excellence that couldn't be hidden, and that the Blue Angels might be one of those environments. The question was whether she could continue to meet the demands of her job without revealing capabilities that could change everything about her carefully constructed career path. The following morning brought news that would test Maya's ability to maintain her cover in ways she hadn't anticipated. Chief Rodriguez gathered the maintenance crew for an unusual briefing that included information about upcoming changes to squadron operations and personnel assignments. Starting next week, we're going to be hosting a group of visiting pilots from various squadrons who are being evaluated for potential Blue Angels selection, Rodriguez announced. This means increased flight operations, more aircraft turnarounds, and higher visibility for everything we do. I want everyone to understand that our performance during this evaluation period will reflect on the entire squadron. Maya listened to the briefing while processing its implications for her own situation. Increased visibility meant more people observing their work, including experienced pilots who might be even more likely to notice unusual competence among the maintenance personnel. The evaluation period would bring additional scrutiny at a time when she was already attracting more attention than she was comfortable with. Additionally, Rodriguez continued, we've been asked to provide detailed documentation of our maintenance procedures and diagnostic methods. The idea is to share best practices with other squadrons and potentially incorporate our methods into broader Navy training programs. Maya felt a growing sense of unease as Rodriguez outlined the scope of the documentation project. Her diagnostic methods and maintenance procedures would be reviewed by people outside the immediate squadron, potentially exposing her approach to analysis by individuals who might recognize capabilities that went beyond standard Navy training. After the briefing, Maya found herself thinking about exit strategies and alternative assignments that might allow her to maintain the low profile she had worked so hard to achieve. But she also realized that requesting a transfer at this point might attract the very attention she was trying to avoid. Sometimes the safest course was to continue with the current assignment while being more careful about how much competence she displayed. The day proceeded with routine maintenance activities, but Maya found herself being more cautious about her diagnostic methods and more circumspect in her interactions with pilots and other personnel. She completed her assigned tasks efficiently, but without the intuitive leaps that had been attracting attention from observant colleagues. However, Maya's attempts at strategic mediocrity were challenged when Blue Angel 2 developed a complex electrical problem that defied standard troubleshooting procedures. The aircraft's navigation system was showing intermittent failures that created potential safety issues during formation flying, but the problem only manifested under specific conditions that were difficult to replicate during ground testing. Maya found herself assigned to assist with the diagnostic effort, working alongside Senior Chief Thompson, the squadron's most experienced avionics specialist. Thompson had 30 years of experience with military aircraft systems, and his knowledge of electrical troubleshooting was legendary throughout the squadron. But after 2 hours of methodical testing, the source of the navigation system failures remained elusive. "This is one of those problems that makes you question your sanity," Thompson muttered as he reviewed the test results for the third time. "All the individual components test normally, but the system fails intermittently during operation. There's got to be something we're missing." Maya had been observing Thompson's diagnostic approach while conducting supporting tests on related systems. She had noticed a pattern in the failure data that suggested a possible source for the intermittent problems, but sharing her analysis would mean revealing the kind of systems-level understanding that had been attracting unwanted attention. "Senior Chief," Maya said carefully, "have you considered the possibility of RF interference from the radar system affecting the navigation computer during specific power settings?" Thompson looked up from his test equipment with sharp attention. "RF interference? What makes you think of that? Maya realized she was about to reveal more analytical capability than she had intended, but the safety implications of the navigation system failures made the risk seem worthwhile. The failure pattern shows correlation with specific radar operating modes, and the navigation computer uses frequency bands that could be susceptible to interference under certain conditions. Thompson studied the failure data with renewed interest, focusing on the timing relationships that Maya had identified. "You're right," he said slowly. "The failures occur during periods when the radar is cycling through specific frequency ranges. But that kind of interference should be prevented by system shielding and filtering. Unless there's a degraded shield connection or a failing filter component," Maya suggested. "Something that would allow interference to affect the navigation system only under specific combinations of power settings and frequency selections." Thompson nodded with growing excitement. That would explain why the problem is intermittent, and why it doesn't show up during standard ground testing. The radar system operates differently during flight operations than it does during maintenance testing. Working together, Maya and Thompson identified a corroded shield connection in the radar antenna assembly that was allowing RF energy to interfere with the navigation computer under specific operating conditions. The repair was straightforward once the source was identified, but finding the problem had required the kind of systems-level analysis that went beyond standard troubleshooting procedures. "Outstanding diagnostic work, Chen," Thompson said as they completed the repair and verified that the navigation system was operating normally. "That kind of interference problem can be nearly impossible to track down without understanding how the various systems interact under operational conditions." Maya felt both satisfaction and apprehension at Thompson's praise. She had solved an important safety problem, but she had also demonstrated analytical capabilities that would inevitably be noticed by others in the squadron. Thompson's reputation meant that his assessment of her diagnostic skills would carry significant weight with squadron leadership. "Just methodical troubleshooting, Senior Chief," Maya replied, hoping to minimize the significance of her contribution. "Process of elimination eventually leads to the right answer." Thompson studied Maya's face with the expression of someone who recognized deflection when he encountered it. "Chen, I've been troubleshooting aircraft electrical systems for 30 years. What you just did wasn't methodical elimination. You identified a complex systems interaction problem by recognizing patterns in failure data that most people wouldn't even think to look for. That's not something you learn from textbooks or standard training programs." Maya found herself in the familiar position of having displayed competence that attracted scrutiny she preferred to avoid. "Experience with carrier operations exposes you to various types of interference problems, Senior Chief. Salt air and electromagnetic environments create conditions that don't exist in shore-based operations. Carrier experience explains familiarity with environmental factors," Thompson agreed. "But what you demonstrated was understanding of RF propagation, systems integration, and failure analysis at the engineering level. That suggests background that goes beyond standard Navy maintenance training." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Harrison, who had come to check on the progress of the navigation system repair. Thompson briefed the commanding officer on the problem they had discovered and the solution that Maya had identified, his description emphasizing the analytical sophistication required to diagnose the interference issue. "Interesting problem," Harrison observed after listening to Thompson's explanation. "RF interference from radar systems affecting navigation computers. That's the kind of systems interaction that could cause problems in other aircraft if it's not properly understood and documented." Harrison turned his attention to Maya with the focused interest she had learned to recognize and dread. "Chen, Senior Chief Thompson tells me you identified the interference pattern that led to finding this problem. How did you recognize the correlation between radar operations and navigation system failures?" Maya felt the weight of Captain Harrison's attention and understood that her response would influence how he perceived her capabilities and background. "The failure timing suggested external influence rather than internal component problems, sir. RF interference was one of several possibilities that seemed worth investigating." "Several possibilities," Harrison repeated. "What were the others?" Maya realized that Harrison was testing her knowledge rather than simply asking for information. Power supply fluctuations, software conflicts, temperature-related component drift, vibration-induced connection problems. But the correlation with radar operating modes made RF interference the most likely candidate. Harrison nodded with the expression of someone whose expectations were being confirmed rather than surprised. "Methodical analysis leading to accurate diagnosis. That's the kind of troubleshooting capability that keeps aircraft flying safely. As Harrison and Thompson discussed the documentation requirements for the repair, Maya reflected on how the navigation system problem had once again exposed her analytical capabilities to people whose attention she preferred to avoid. Every complex problem she solved successfully made it more difficult to maintain the modest profile she had cultivated throughout her career. But Maya also understood that avoiding complex problems would compromise her effectiveness as a maintenance specialist and potentially create safety risks for the pilots who depended on her work. The Blue Angels assignment was forcing her to choose between maintaining her cover and meeting her professional responsibilities, and that choice was becoming more difficult with each passing day. The evening brought a conversation that would crystallize Maya's growing concerns about her situation. Commander Torres approached her during the quieter hours of the night shift, ostensibly to check on the status of the navigation system repair, but clearly interested in a more substantial discussion. Senior Chief Thompson tells me you identified the RF interference problem that was causing our navigation failures, Torres said. Impressive diagnostic work. Team effort, ma'am, Maya replied. Senior Chief Thompson did most of the actual troubleshooting. Torres smiled slightly. According to Thompson, you recognized the interference pattern and suggested the diagnostic approach that led to finding the problem. He also mentioned that your analysis demonstrated understanding of systems interactions that he hasn't seen from many maintenance personnel. Maya continued her inspection work while responding to Torres's comments, hoping to avoid the intense scrutiny that seemed to accompany these conversations with Blue Angels pilots. Experience teaches you to look for patterns that might not be obvious initially, ma'am. What kind of experience teaches someone to recognize RF interference patterns between radar and navigation systems? Torres asked directly. The question was more specific than Maya was comfortable answering truthfully, but it was also difficult to deflect without appearing evasive. Carrier operations expose you to complex electromagnetic environments, ma'am. You learn to consider interference problems that might not occur in simpler operating conditions. Torres nodded thoughtfully. Carrier experience would certainly provide exposure to RF interference issues. But the kind of analysis you conducted today suggests understanding that goes beyond just familiarity with interference problems. It suggests understanding of how systems are designed to interact and what happens when those interactions break down. Maya felt the conversation moving into territory that could expose more about her background than she was prepared to reveal. I've had good training and experienced supervisors throughout my career, ma'am. I'm sure you have, Torres agreed. But training and supervision don't account for the kind of intuitive understanding you've been demonstrating. That comes from a different kind of experience. Torres paused before continuing, her tone becoming more direct. Chen, I've been flying Navy aircraft for 12 years, and I've worked with maintenance personnel at every level of experience and training. What I've observed from you during the past few months is diagnostic capability that goes beyond anything I've seen from standard Navy maintenance programs. Maya stopped her inspection work and looked directly at Torres, recognizing that deflection was no longer a viable strategy. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're suggesting. I'm suggesting that you have background or training that isn't reflected in your official records, Torres replied calmly. I'm suggesting that someone with your demonstrated capabilities might have reasons for choosing maintenance work over other career paths that would seem more appropriate for your skill level. The directness of Torres's assessment left Maya with limited options for response. She could continue deflecting, which would probably convince Torres that her suspicions were correct. She could provide partial truth, which might satisfy Torres's curiosity, while preserving her core secrets. Or she could trust Torres with information that could fundamentally change her situation at Pensacola. Ma'am, my career path has been influenced by factors that aren't necessarily reflected in standard personnel records, Maya said carefully. Torres studied Maya's face with the attention of someone who recognized the significance of what had just been acknowledged. Personal factors, professional factors, or classification factors. Maya felt her pulse quicken at the implications of Torres's question. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, ma'am. I'm asking whether your current assignment represents personal choice, professional limitation, or security considerations that require certain types of cover positions. The question revealed that Torres understood possibilities that Maya hadn't expected anyone to consider. Commander Torres wasn't just observant, she was knowledgeable about personnel patterns that suggested familiarity with classified programs and cover assignments. Ma'am, I think this conversation might be moving beyond what I'm comfortable discussing, Maya replied. Torres nodded with understanding rather than disappointment. Fair enough, Chen, but let me say this. If you're here for reasons that require discretion about your background, you should know that your capabilities are becoming visible to people who know how to recognize them. That visibility might become a problem if you're trying to maintain a low profile. Maya felt a chill of recognition at Torres's warning. The commander was telling her that her cover was compromised, but she was also suggesting that she understood the reasons why someone might need cover in the first place. "Thank you for the heads up, ma'am," Maya said quietly. "No problem," Torres replied. "And Chen? If circumstances change, and you need someone who understands complicated career situations, I'm available for conversation." As Torres walked away, Maya reflected on the implications of their discussion. Commander Torres had essentially told her that she recognized Maya's situation as something more complex than standard Navy career progression, and she had offered assistance if needed. The question was whether Torres's recognition represented a threat to her cover, or an opportunity for a different kind of support. Maya spent the remainder of her shift thinking about choices and consequences, about the sustainability of her current strategy, and the alternatives that might be available if her cover continued to deteriorate. Working with the Blue Angels was proving to be more challenging than she had anticipated. Not because of the technical demands, but because of the human factors that made anonymity increasingly difficult to maintain. For the first time since arriving at Pensacola, Maya seriously considered the possibility that her carefully constructed career strategy might need fundamental revision. The question was whether she was ready to risk the security of invisibility for the uncertain benefits of acknowledgement and recognition. Part 3. The Moment of Truth. The emergency alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet of Pensacola Naval Air Station at 0547 hours, its urgent wail cutting through the normal sounds of morning preparation like a blade through silk. Maya jolted awake in her quarters, instantly alert with the kind of reflexive response that came from years of high-stakes operations where seconds could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The base communication system crackled to life with measured urgency. All personnel, emergency aircraft recovery in progress. Blue Angel 4 experiencing mechanical emergency, requesting immediate landing clearance. All non-essential personnel clear the flight line. Emergency response teams to stations. Maya was dressed and moving toward the Blue Angel's hangar before the announcement finished. Lieutenant Commander Walsh was airborne in Blue Angel 4, returning from what should have been a routine early morning test flight following maintenance work completed the previous evening. Emergency recoveries were rare enough that they drew the attention of everyone on base, but Maya felt a personal responsibility for any aircraft she had worked on recently. The scene at the flight line was controlled chaos orchestrated by people who had trained for exactly this kind of situation. Emergency vehicles positioned themselves along the runway while tower controllers cleared all other air traffic from the area. In the distance, a single F/A-18 Super Hornet approached the field with the slightly irregular flight pattern that indicated a pilot dealing with aircraft systems that weren't responding normally. Captain Harrison stood near the mobile command unit, monitoring radio communications while watching the approaching aircraft through binoculars. Chief Rodriguez had positioned maintenance personnel where they could respond immediately once the aircraft was safely on the ground. Maya found herself standing with the other specialists, watching Blue Angel 4's approach while mentally reviewing every system she had worked on during recent maintenance periods. Blue Angel 4, Pensacola Tower. The radio communication was audible through speakers positioned around the flight line. Report your status and intentions. Walsh's voice came through clearly, professional despite the obvious stress of managing an aircraft emergency. Pensacola Tower, Blue Angel 4. Experiencing total hydraulic system failure. Primary and backup systems showing zero pressure. Flight controls are manual reversion only. Requesting straight-in approach to runway 01. Maya felt her stomach clench as she processed the implications of Walsh's report. Total hydraulic failure in an FA-18 meant that the pilot was controlling the aircraft through mechanical linkages without power assistance. The aircraft would be controllable, but extremely difficult to handle, especially during the critical phases of approach and landing. Manual reversion landings required exceptional pilot skill and usually resulted in very hard touchdowns that could cause additional damage to the aircraft. Roger, Blue Angel 4. You are cleared for straight-in approach runway 01. Winds calm. Visibility unlimited. Emergency equipment is standing by. Maya watched the approaching aircraft with professional interest mixed with personal concern. Walsh was one of the pilots who had taken time to understand her work and acknowledge her contributions to aircraft safety. More immediately, she had worked on Blue Angel 4's hydraulic systems within the past month, and she found herself reviewing every component and connection she had touched during those maintenance periods. The approach looked normal until Blue Angel 4 reached the final mile before touchdown. Maya could see through binoculars that the aircraft's control surfaces were moving in larger deflections than normal, indicating that Walsh was fighting to maintain precise control without hydraulic assistance. The F/A-18 was designed to be controllable in manual reversion mode, but it required constant pilot input to maintain stable flight. Blue Angel 4, you appear to be maintaining good control, the tower controller's voice carried reassurance mixed with professional monitoring. Wind remains calm. You're cleared to land. Maya watched the final approach with the kind of focused attention that came from understanding exactly what was happening in the cockpit and what could go wrong during the next 60 seconds. Walsh was demonstrating textbook emergency procedures, maintaining approach speed and descent rate despite the dramatically increased control forces required to fly the aircraft manually. The touchdown was harder than normal but well within acceptable limits for an emergency landing. Blue Angel 4's main landing gear contacted the runway with authority, followed immediately by the nose gear settling onto the concrete. Maya could see sparks flying from the brakes as Walsh applied maximum stopping force, but the aircraft remained under control as it rolled down the runway. Blue Angel 4 is down safely, the tower announced, and Maya felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Emergency landings always carried risks, but Walsh had demonstrated the kind of exceptional pilot skill that made the Blue Angels the premier flight demonstration squadron in naval aviation. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft as it rolled to a stop, but their response was precautionary rather than urgent. Blue Angel 4 had landed safely despite the complete hydraulic system failure, and Walsh was already beginning the engine shutdown procedures that would allow maintenance personnel to begin investigating the source of the emergency. Maya found herself walking toward the aircraft along with the other maintenance specialist, but her attention was focused on understanding what had caused the hydraulic system failure, rather than simply responding to the immediate situation. Total hydraulic failure was extremely rare in modern military aircraft, and she wanted to understand whether the problem represented a design flaw, maintenance error, or simple component failure. Walsh climbed down from the cockpit with the slightly shaky movements of someone who had just completed a challenging emergency procedure. Captain Harrison was there to greet him personally, along with the flight surgeon who would conduct the mandatory medical examination that followed any aircraft emergency. "Hell of a job bringing her down, Spike," Harrison said, using Walsh's call sign. "How did the controls feel during the approach?" Walsh pulled off his helmet and flight gloves while considering his response. Heavy but controllable. Took about 3 times normal control input to get the response I needed, but she flew like the manual says she should in manual reversion mode. The engineers who designed this bird knew what they were doing. Maya listened to Walsh's debrief while examining the aircraft for obvious signs of hydraulic fluid loss. She could see fluid stains on the concrete beneath the aircraft, indicating that the hydraulic failure had been caused by fluid loss rather than pump failure or electrical problems. Finding the source of the leak would be the first priority for the investigation team. Chief Rodriguez approached Maya as she began her preliminary inspection of the aircraft's external systems. "Chen, I want you on the investigation team for this hydraulic failure. Your diagnostic experience might help us identify the source of the problem quickly." Maya nodded while continuing her visual inspection of the aircraft's belly and landing gear areas. "I can see hydraulic fluid stains indicating significant fluid loss, Chief. The leak source should be identifiable once we get the aircraft into the hangar and start detailed examination." "Good. Walsh is going to be available for technical consultation once the flight surgeon clears him. The sooner we understand what happened, the sooner we can determine whether this was an isolated incident or something that could affect other aircraft." Maya spent the next hour conducting external inspection of Blue Angel 4 while the aircraft was prepared for towing to the maintenance hangar. The hydraulic fluid stains told a story of progressive system failure, starting with minor seepage that had gradually increased until total system pressure was lost. The pattern suggested component failure rather than battle damage or maintenance error, but determining the exact source would require detailed inspection of internal systems. The aircraft was towed to the Blue Angels maintenance hangar where Maya joined Senior Chief Thompson and two other specialists in beginning the systematic investigation that would determine the cause of the hydraulic failure. Maya found herself assigned to examine the primary hydraulic system, while Thompson focused on the backup system that had also failed during the emergency. Working methodically through the primary hydraulic system, Maya traced fluid lines and examined components for signs of failure or deterioration. The investigation required removing access panels and inspecting components that were normally hidden during routine maintenance, creating an opportunity to examine systems at a level of detail that wasn't possible during regular inspections. Maya discovered the source of the hydraulic failure in a location that surprised everyone involved in the investigation. A high-pressure line connection deep within the aircraft's structure had failed due to fatigue cracking in the fitting itself. The crack had allowed hydraulic fluid to spray onto hot engine components, where it had burned off without creating the external fluid puddles that usually indicated hydraulic leaks. "This is interesting," Maya called to Senior Chief Thompson. "Primary system failure is due to fatigue cracking in a high-pressure fitting located in the engine bay area. The crack allowed fluid to spray directly onto hot engine surfaces, where it evaporated, rather than pooling on the ground." Thompson examined Maya's discovery with the attention of someone who understood its implications. Fatigue cracking in that fitting could indicate a manufacturing defect or installation problem that might affect other aircraft. What about the backup system? That should have provided hydraulic power even with primary system failure. Maya continued her investigation while Thompson examined the backup hydraulic system. She discovered that the backup system had failed due to a related but separate problem. The high-pressure fluid spray from the primary system failure had damaged electrical connections to the backup system pump, creating a cascade failure that resulted in total hydraulic system loss. Backup system failure was secondary to primary system failure, Maya reported. Hydraulic fluid spray from the primary system leak damaged electrical connections to the backup pump, causing it to shut down automatically. Thompson studied the failed components with growing concern. So we had a primary system mechanical failure that caused a secondary electrical failure in the backup system. That's the kind of cascade failure that the system is supposed to be designed to prevent. Maya nodded while documenting the failure modes she had discovered. The designers probably didn't anticipate that primary system failure in this location could affect backup system electrical components. It's a combination of failures that reveals a gap in the redundancy design. The investigation continued for several hours as Maya and Thompson documented every aspect of the hydraulic system failures. Their findings would be reported to higher authority for analysis and potential fleet-wide corrective action, but the immediate concern was determining whether other Blue Angels aircraft might be susceptible to similar failures. Captain Harrison arrived in the maintenance hangar as Maya was completing her documentation of the investigation findings. He studied the failed components with the attention of someone who understood that aircraft emergencies usually resulted from combinations of factors rather than single-point failures. "What's the bottom line, Senior Chief?" Harrison asked Thompson. "Primary hydraulic system failure due to fatigue cracking in a high-pressure fitting followed by backup system electrical failure caused by fluid spray from the primary system leak," Thompson reported. Chen identified both failure modes and traced the cascade sequence that resulted in total hydraulic system loss. Harrison turned his attention to Maya with the focused interest she had learned to recognize and appreciate rather than dread. "Chen, this investigation required understanding both mechanical and electrical failure modes, plus systems integration knowledge to identify the cascade sequence. That's sophisticated failure analysis." Maya felt the familiar tension of having demonstrated competence that attracted attention, but she also felt satisfaction at having solved a complex problem that could prevent similar emergencies in other aircraft. "The failure sequence was logical, once the primary leak location was identified, sir. The backup system electrical damage was a secondary effect that became obvious during detailed examination." "Logical in retrospect," Harrison agreed, "but recognizing the potential for cascade failures requires understanding how systems interact under abnormal conditions. That's the kind of analysis that prevents accidents rather than just investigating them after they happen." Harrison paused before continuing, his expression becoming more serious. "Chen, I've been watching your work since you arrived here 3 months ago. The engine damage you identified, the hydraulic problems you've diagnosed, the electrical interference issues you've solved, And now this investigation. They all demonstrate diagnostic capabilities that go beyond standard Navy maintenance training. Maya felt the moment of decision approaching that she had been anticipating and dreading since arriving at Pensacola. Harrison was clearly leading toward questions about her background and capabilities that would be difficult to deflect or dismiss. "I've been fortunate to work with excellent supervisors and have access to good training opportunities, sir." "Training and supervision are important," Harrison acknowledged. "But what I've observed suggests natural aptitude combined with experience that isn't reflected in your official records. That combination makes me curious about your background and interested in your potential for expanded responsibilities." Maya processed Harrison's words while considering her response options. She could continue deflecting his interest, but that strategy was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. She could provide partial truth about her background, which might satisfy his curiosity while preserving her core secrets. Or she could trust Harrison with information that could fundamentally change her situation at Pensacola. "Sir, my background includes experiences that aren't necessarily reflected in standard personnel records," Maya said carefully. Harrison studied her face with the expression of someone who recognized the significance of what had just been acknowledged. "Military experiences, civilian experiences, or classified experiences?" The directness of Harrison's question revealed that he understood possibilities that Maya hadn't expected anyone to consider. Captain Harrison wasn't just observant. He was knowledgeable about career patterns that suggested familiarity with non-standard assignments and cover positions. "Sir, I think that might be moving beyond what I'm comfortable discussing in this setting," Maya replied. Harrison nodded with understanding rather than disappointment. "Fair enough, Chen. But let me be direct about something. Your capabilities are becoming visible to people who know how to recognize them. If you're here for reasons that require discretion about your background, you should know that maintaining that discretion is becoming more difficult." Maya felt a chill of recognition at Harrison's assessment. The captain was telling her that her cover was compromised, but he was also suggesting that he understood the reasons why someone might need cover in the first place. "Additionally," Harrison continued, "I've received some interesting phone calls about you from people whose names I can't mention. People who are asking questions about your current assignment and your performance here. That level of interest from outside the normal chain of command suggests that your situation is more complex than standard Navy career progression." Maya felt her pulse quicken at the implications of Harrison's revelation. People were making inquiries about her assignment and performance, which meant that her carefully constructed anonymity was attracting exactly the kind of attention she had been trying to avoid. "Sir, are those inquiries something I should be concerned about?" Maya asked. "That depends on whether you're trying to stay hidden or whether you're ready to step into a different kind of visibility," Harrison replied. "The people making inquiries aren't investigating you for disciplinary reasons. They're evaluating you for opportunities that would represent significant career advancement if you're interested in that kind of change." Harrison paused before continuing, his tone becoming more direct. "Chen, I'm going to share something with you that I probably shouldn't. The Blue Angels assignment wasn't random rotation. You were specifically requested for this position by people who wanted to observe your performance in a high-visibility environment. Your work here has been exactly what they hoped to see." Maya felt the foundations of her carefully constructed cover story shifting beneath her feet. The Blue Angels assignment hadn't been routine rotation. It had been orchestrated by people who knew enough about her background to arrange specific assignments for evaluation purposes. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting," Maya said. "I'm suggesting that your attempts to maintain a low profile have been noticed by people who recognize exceptional capability when they see it," Harrison replied. "I'm suggesting that continuing to hide your abilities might actually be limiting opportunities that could better utilize your talents while providing the kind of professional satisfaction that matches your skill level." Harrison waited for Maya's response, but when she remained silent, he continued. "Chen, I'm going to make you an offer. Tomorrow morning we're conducting flight evaluations for potential Blue Angels pilot candidates. I want you to participate in those evaluations, not as maintenance personnel, but as a pilot candidate." Maya felt her world tilting as she processed Harrison's unexpected offer. "Sir, I'm not qualified for pilot candidate evaluation. I don't have the flight hours or experience requirements for Blue Angels selection." Harrison smiled for the first time during their conversation. "Chen, I think you'll find that your flight qualifications are more extensive than your official records indicate. The people who have been making inquiries about you have provided certain information that suggests pilot candidate evaluation would be appropriate. Maya realized that Harrison knew far more about her background than she had understood. The captain wasn't just observant. He had access to information about her history that explained his confidence in suggesting pilot evaluation. Sir, even if my flight qualifications were adequate, participating in pilot candidate evaluation would create visibility that might not be compatible with my current assignment requirements, Maya said carefully. Your current assignment requirements are about to change regardless of your decision about pilot evaluation, Harrison replied. The people who arranged your assignment here have seen what they needed to see. Your next assignment will reflect their assessment of your capabilities and potential, whether you participate in pilot evaluation or not. Harrison's revelation made Maya's situation clear in ways that were both liberating and terrifying. Her cover had been compromised from the beginning, but not by accident or investigation. It had been compromised by design, by people who had arranged her assignment specifically to evaluate her capabilities in a controlled environment. Sir, what exactly are you asking me to do? Maya asked. I'm asking you to demonstrate the pilot skills that your background suggests you possess, Harrison replied. I'm asking you to show the Blue Angels evaluation team what you're really capable of when you're not hiding behind maintenance duties and modest deflection. Maya considered Harrison's request while processing its implications for her carefully constructed career strategy. Demonstrating pilot skills would end any possibility of returning to the anonymity she had built around maintenance work. But continuing to hide her abilities apparently wasn't an option anymore, since her cover had been orchestrated by people who already knew the truth about her background. Sir, if I participate in pilot evaluation, what happens afterward? Maya asked. That depends on how well you perform and what opportunities become available, Harrison replied. But I can tell you that the people who have been observing your work here are interested in utilizing your capabilities at levels that would represent significant advancement from maintenance duties. Maya spent several minutes considering Harrison's offer, while weighing the risks and benefits of abandoning the cover she had maintained for years. The safety of anonymity was appealing, but it was also limiting in ways that had become increasingly apparent during her time with the Blue Angels. Working with exceptional people had reminded her of what was possible when capabilities were utilized fully, rather than hidden behind strategic modesty. Sir, I'll participate in the pilot evaluation, Maya decided. Harrison nodded with satisfaction rather than surprise. Good. Report to the flight line at 0600 tomorrow morning. Bring your flight gear. Sir, I don't have flight gear at Pensacola, Maya replied. Harrison smiled again. Check your quarters when you get back tonight. I think you'll find that flight gear has been provided. As Maya left the maintenance hangar, she reflected on how dramatically her situation had changed in the course of a single conversation. Captain Harrison had essentially told her that her cover had been orchestrated from the beginning, that her performance was being evaluated by people beyond the immediate squadron, and that her attempts to maintain anonymity were no longer necessary or effective. Walking across the base toward her quarters, Maya found herself thinking about choices and consequences in entirely new ways. For years, she had chosen invisibility and safety over recognition and opportunity. Tomorrow, she would discover whether abandoning that strategy would lead to the kind of professional satisfaction that matched her actual capabilities. Maya arrived at her quarters to find a package waiting outside her door. Inside, she discovered a complete set of flight gear, including helmet, survival vest, and flight suit, all in her size and properly configured for FA-18 operations. The equipment was current military issue, but clearly selected specifically for her use, confirming Harrison's assertion that her participation in pilot evaluation had been anticipated. That evening, Maya sat in her quarters and mentally prepared for the flying evaluation that would either validate Harrison's confidence in her abilities or expose her to professional embarrassment in front of the Navy's premier flight demonstration squadron. She hadn't flown high-performance military aircraft in over 2 years, and she had never flown FJ-18 Super Hornets under evaluation conditions that would determine her future career opportunities. But as Maya reviewed the aircraft systems and procedures she would need for the following day's evaluation, she found herself experiencing something she hadn't felt in years: anticipation for a mission that would allow her to demonstrate her full capabilities rather than hiding them behind careful anonymity. The prospect was both exhilarating and terrifying, but it was also honest in ways that her maintenance cover had never been. The morning of the pilot evaluation arrived with perfect flying weather, clear skies, light winds, and unlimited visibility that would allow precise assessment of flying skills without environmental complications. Maya arrived at the flight line at 0600 hours wearing the flight gear that had been provided, feeling the familiar combination of nervousness and excitement that preceded challenging flight operations. The Blue Angels flight line was busier than usual, with 6 aircraft prepared for evaluation flights and a group of pilot candidates from various squadrons preparing for the selection process that would determine new team members. Maya recognized several of the candidates as accomplished pilots with impressive records, making her realize that her own performance would be measured against exceptionally high standards. Captain Harrison approached Maya as she completed her pre-flight equipment checks. "Ready for this, Chen?" "As ready as I can be without recent FA-18 experience, sir," Maya replied honestly. "Don't worry about currency," Harrison advised. "Stick to basic flying fundamentals and demonstrate good judgment. The evaluation team is more interested in natural ability and learning potential than current proficiency in specific aircraft types." Maya nodded while continuing her equipment checks, but she understood that Harrison's reassurance was polite rather than accurate. The Blue Angels evaluation process was legendary for its demanding standards, and pilot candidates were expected to demonstrate exceptional skills regardless of their previous experience with specific aircraft types. Commander Torres approached as Maya completed her equipment preparation. "Morning, Chen. Interesting to see you on this side of the flight line for a change." "Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the evaluation." Torres studied Maya's face with the expression of someone who was seeing her in an entirely new context. "Chen, I have to ask, how much F/A-18 flight time do you actually have?" Maya hesitated before answering, recognizing that Torres was asking for information that might not be reflected in her official records. "Some F/A-18 experience, ma'am, but not recent currency." "Some experience meaning a few flights, or some experience meaning extensive background that you haven't mentioned previously?" Torres asked directly. Maya realized that Torres was testing her honesty as much as gathering information. "Extensive background that hasn't been relevant to my maintenance duties, ma'am." Torres nodded with understanding rather than surprise. "I thought so. Your technical knowledge of aircraft systems always suggested pilot-level understanding rather than just maintenance familiarity." The pilot evaluation began with detailed briefings on flight procedures, safety protocols, and performance standards that would be used to assess each candidate's flying abilities. Maya listened to the briefings while reviewing systems knowledge she hadn't accessed in over 2 years, hoping that her preparation would be adequate for the challenging evaluation ahead. The evaluation process involved individual flights with Blue Angels instructor pilots, who would assess each candidate's basic flying skills, formation abilities, and potential for advanced training. Maya was assigned to fly with Commander Mitchell, the narrator pilot whose aircraft she had worked on during her first week with the squadron. "Ready to see how the other half lives, Chen?" Mitchell asked as they walked toward Blue Angel 6 for Maya's evaluation flight. "Looking forward to it, ma'am," Maya replied, though her emotions were more complex than simple anticipation. The pre-flight inspection of Blue Angel 6 was routine, but Maya found herself examining the aircraft from an entirely different perspective than she had during maintenance duties. Instead of looking for mechanical problems or maintenance requirements, she was assessing the aircraft as a pilot who would be responsible for safely operating a complex machine under demanding conditions. "Any concerns about the aircraft?" Mitchell asked as Maya completed her inspection. "No, ma'am. The aircraft appears ready for flight operations." Mitchell smiled. "Good answer. But I noticed you were paying particular attention to the control surface actuators and flight control computers. That's pilot-level inspection rather than passenger-level observation." Maya realized that her inspection technique had revealed more familiarity with aircraft systems than a typical pilot candidate might demonstrate. "Maintenance background makes you pay attention to systems that affect flight safety, ma'am. Maintenance background explains knowledge of what to look for," Mitchell agreed. "But your inspection technique suggested familiarity with pilot responsibilities rather than just maintenance awareness." Mitchell's observation reminded Maya that every aspect of her performance was being evaluated, not just her actual flying skills. The Blue Angels selection process involved assessment of technical knowledge, professional judgment, and overall suitability for the demanding responsibilities of demonstration flying. The cockpit of Blue Angel 6 was familiar from Maya's maintenance work, but sitting in the pilot's seat created an entirely different relationship with the aircraft's systems and capabilities. Maya conducted her pre-flight checks with the systematic precision that had been drilled into her during years of military flight training, but she could feel Mitchell's attention focused on her procedures and technique. "Interesting checklist technique," Mitchell observed. "Very methodical and thorough. How long since your last FA-18 flight?" Maya considered her answer carefully, knowing that honesty was important, but also aware that revealing too much about her background might create complications she wasn't prepared to handle. "Over 2 years, ma'am. 2 years is a significant gap for maintaining currency in high-performance aircraft," Mitchell noted. "Are you comfortable proceeding with the evaluation flight?" "Yes, ma'am. Basic flying skills are transferable between aircraft types, and I've reviewed FA-18 systems and procedures extensively." Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Good attitude. We'll start with basic aircraft handling and work up to more complex maneuvers as you demonstrate proficiency." The engine start and taxi procedures proceeded normally, but Maya found herself experiencing the particular satisfaction that came from operating complex machinery with precision and confidence. The FA-18 Super Hornet was one of the most sophisticated aircraft in the world, and being responsible for its safe operation was both challenging and exhilarating. Tower clearance for takeoff came through clearly, and Maya advanced the throttles smoothly while maintaining precise directional control during the acceleration phase. The FA-18 lifted off with the authority and grace that characterized modern military fighters, climbing rapidly into the clear Florida sky that provided unlimited visibility for the evaluation flight. "Nice takeoff," Mitchell commented through the intercom. "Smooth power application and good directional control. How does the aircraft feel to you?" "Responsive and well-balanced, ma'am," Maya replied, while establishing the climb attitude and power setting that Mitchell had specified during the pre-flight briefing. "Good. Let's proceed to the practice area, where we can assess your basic flying skills without dealing with air traffic control complications." The flight to the practice area provided Maya with time to reacquaint herself with F/A-18 handling characteristics while demonstrating basic aircraft control to Mitchell. Maya found that her muscle memory for high-performance flight operations remained intact despite the 2-year gap since her last military flying experience. The practice area was located over the Gulf of Mexico, where clear skies and unlimited visibility provided ideal conditions for flight evaluation. Mitchell began the assessment with basic maneuvers designed to test Maya's understanding of aircraft performance and her ability to maintain precise control during various flight regimes. "Let's start with some basic aerobatics," Mitchell directed. "Aileron roll to the right, maintaining altitude and airspeed throughout the maneuver." Maya rolled the aircraft smoothly through 360 degrees while maintaining the altitude and airspeed parameters that Mitchell had specified. The maneuver required precise coordination of all flight controls to prevent altitude loss or speed variations during the rolling motion. "Excellent technique," Mitchell observed. "Smooth control inputs and good parameter management. Let's try a loop with the same emphasis on precision." Maya executed the loop with the kind of precision that came from extensive aerobatic training, pulling the aircraft through a perfect circle in the vertical plane while maintaining coordinated flight throughout the maneuver. The G-forces pressed her into her seat during the bottom portion of the loop, but she maintained precise control inputs despite the physical stress. "Outstanding," Mitchell commented. "Your aerobatic technique suggests extensive training and experience. Where did you develop those skills?" Maya felt the familiar tension of having demonstrated competence that attracted questions about her background. "Various training opportunities throughout my career, ma'am." Mitchell's tone suggested that she recognized deflection when she encountered it. "Chen, your aerobatic skills are at the level of an experienced fighter pilot, not someone with casual training exposure. That kind of precision comes from intensive instruction and extensive practice." Maya realized that her flying performance was revealing capabilities that couldn't be explained by casual training or limited experience. "I've been fortunate to have access to excellent instruction opportunities, ma'am." "I'm sure you have," Mitchell replied. "But access to instruction doesn't account for the natural ability you're demonstrating. That's something you either have or you don't, and you clearly have it in abundance." Mitchell continued the evaluation with increasingly complex maneuvers designed to test Maya's limits and assess her potential for advanced training. Maya found herself performing at levels that surprised even her, executing difficult maneuvers with precision that exceeded her own expectations. "Let's try some formation flying," Mitchell directed. "I'll take control and establish us in position on Blue Angel 2. When I transfer control back to you, maintain tight formation while I call position corrections." Maya watched Mitchell demonstrate the precise control inputs required to maintain close formation on another aircraft, noting the small but constant adjustments needed to stay in proper position relative to the lead aircraft. Formation flying was one of the most demanding aspects of Blue Angel's operations, requiring absolute precision and unwavering concentration. "Your aircraft," Mitchell called, transferring control to Maya while they were positioned approximately 50 feet from Blue Angel 2. Maya took control and immediately felt the challenge of maintaining precise formation position while dealing with turbulence and relative motion between the two aircraft. Formation flying required anticipating the lead aircraft's movements and making control inputs that kept both aircraft in proper relationship despite constantly changing conditions. "Move to close parade position," Mitchell directed. "Maintain 3 feet wingtip separation while matching all movements of the lead aircraft." Maya maneuvered closer to Blue Angel 2 until the wingtips were separated by only a few feet, then worked to maintain that position while the lead aircraft executed gentle turns and altitude changes. The margin for error was minimal, requiring absolute concentration and precise control inputs to prevent collision or loss of formation position. "Exceptional formation flying," Mitchell observed after several minutes of close formation work. "Your position discipline and control precision are at the level of an experienced formation pilot. That's not something you learn in basic flight training." Maya found herself experiencing the satisfaction that came from performing at the highest levels of her capability, demonstrating skills that had been dormant during her years of maintenance work, but remained sharp despite lack of recent practice. Flying with the Blue Angels was reminding her of why she had chosen military aviation as a career path before circumstances had forced her to seek anonymity in less visible roles. "Let's return to base," Mitchell directed. "I've seen enough to complete my evaluation of your flying abilities." The return flight to Pensacola provided Maya with time to reflect on her performance during the evaluation and consider its implications for her future career opportunities. She had demonstrated flying skills that clearly exceeded the levels expected from typical pilot candidates, but she had also revealed capabilities that would inevitably lead to questions about her background and training. The landing approach to Pensacola required precise flying in busy airspace, providing one final opportunity for Maya to demonstrate her aircraft handling skills under realistic operational conditions. Maya executed the approach with the kind of precision that impressed even experienced pilots, touching down smoothly and maintaining precise directional control during the landing roll. "Outstanding flight, Chen," Mitchell said as they completed the post-flight procedures. "Your flying skills are at the level of a seasoned military pilot with extensive high-performance experience. I'm curious to understand how someone with your demonstrated abilities ended up working maintenance duties." Maya secured the aircraft systems while considering her response to Mitchell's question. "Career paths don't always follow predictable patterns, ma'am." Mitchell studied Maya's face with the expression of someone who recognized that she had just heard a significant understatement. "Chen, your flying performance today was exceptional by any standard. You demonstrated skills that very few pilot candidates possess, and you did it after a 2-year gap in currency. That suggests background and training that go far beyond what your official records indicate." Maya completed her post-flight checks while processing Mitchell's assessment and its implications for her future. The evaluation flight had been successful from a performance standpoint, but it had also exposed capabilities that made her background more mysterious rather than less so. As Maya climbed down from the aircraft, she found Captain Harrison waiting on the flight line with an expression of satisfaction rather than surprise. "How did it go, Chen?" "The aircraft performed normally throughout the flight, sir," Maya replied, falling back on the kind of neutral reporting that had served her well during years of avoiding attention. Harrison smiled at Maya's diplomatic response. "I was asking about your performance, not the aircraft's. Commander Mitchell tells me you demonstrated exceptional flying skills during the evaluation." Maya realized that Harrison had already received Mitchell's assessment of her flying abilities, making further deflection pointless. "The evaluation went well, sir. Commander Mitchell was an excellent instructor pilot. Commander Mitchell was impressed enough to recommend you for immediate advancement to advanced formation training," Harrison said directly. "She believes you have the natural ability and professional judgment to succeed in the Blue Angels program with minimal additional preparation." Maya felt both pride and apprehension at Mitchell's recommendation. Success in the Blue Angels program would represent the pinnacle of military flying achievement, but it would also mean complete abandonment of the anonymity she had carefully maintained throughout her career. "Sir, I appreciate Commander Mitchell's confidence, but I should point out that my current assignment might not be compatible with Blue Angels training requirements," Maya said carefully. Harrison's expression suggested that he understood the implications of Maya's response. Chen, your current assignment is about to change regardless of your decision about Blue Angels training. The people who arranged your evaluation here have made their assessment, and they're prepared to offer you opportunities that would utilize your capabilities more effectively than maintenance duties. Harrison paused before continuing, his tone becoming more direct. The question is whether you're ready to step out of the shadows and accept the kind of recognition that your abilities deserve, or whether you prefer to continue hiding behind positions that don't match your potential. Maya considered Harrison's challenge while weighing the benefits of recognition against the security of anonymity. The Blue Angels assignment had forced her to confront the limitations of her careful strategy for remaining invisible, and the pilot evaluation had demonstrated that her capabilities couldn't be hidden indefinitely. Sir, what exactly are you offering me? Maya asked. I'm offering you the chance to become a Blue Angels pilot, Harrison replied. Full squadron membership, complete training program, and the opportunity to represent naval aviation at the highest levels of public visibility. Harrison's offer was everything Maya had once dreamed of achieving in her military career, but it was also everything she had learned to avoid during years of seeking safety and anonymity. Becoming a Blue Angels pilot would mean accepting the kind of public recognition that was incompatible with the low profile she had worked so hard to maintain. Additionally, Harrison continued, I'm authorized to tell you that accepting the Blue Angels position would resolve certain administrative complications regarding your previous assignments. Your new position would provide official cover for capabilities that currently require unofficial concealment. Maya realized that Harrison was offering her a way to legitimize skills and experience that she had been forced to hide behind maintenance duties and strategic modesty. The Blue Angels assignment would allow her to use her full capabilities while providing official explanation for competence that had been difficult to explain through conventional career progression. Sir, I accept your offer, Maya decided. Harrison nodded with satisfaction. Good. Report to the squadron ready room tomorrow morning at 0800 for your first official briefing as a Blue Angels pilot candidate. Your maintenance duties are officially transferred to other personnel effective immediately. As Maya walked away from the flight line, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in the course of a single day. Hours earlier, she had been a maintenance specialist trying to remain invisible among the support personnel who kept the Blue Angels flying. Now she was a pilot candidate preparing to join the most visible squadron in naval aviation. The transformation was both exhilarating and terrifying, representing the end of years spent hiding her capabilities and the beginning of a career phase that would demand everything she had to offer. Maya had chosen invisibility and safety for understandable reasons, but she had also discovered that some opportunities required courage to step into the light. 3 months later, Maya stood on the flight line at an air show in Dayton, Ohio, watching thousands of spectators gather to witness the Blue Angels demonstration that had become the pinnacle of military aviation entertainment. She wore the distinctive blue and gold flight suit that marked her as a member of the Navy's premier flight demonstration squadron, but more importantly, she wore the confidence that came from finding her true calling after years of hiding her potential. The journey from maintenance specialist to Blue Angels pilot had been intensive and demanding, requiring her to demonstrate not just flying skills but the ability to work as part of a team where precision and trust were measured in inches and split seconds. Maya had discovered that formation flying at demonstration levels required a different kind of excellence than solo aerobatics or combat flying, demanding absolute coordination with 5 other pilots who depended on her consistency and judgment for their safety. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.